This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on whichever region you are dialing in for today. So my name is Neil. Welcome to the event. So today's event is sponsored by Micro Focus and Vivit's local user group for Nebraska. A little bit background about me. My name is Neil. I work for Physicians Mutual Insurance here in Omaha, Nebraska. I lead their quality engineering practice purely out of hobby. It is also my passion to interact with like-minded thought leaders in the industry. So I was recently elected as a board member for Vivit, and I also helped drive some synergy here in Nebraska with Vivit's chapter. So that's about me. And quickly to introduce the speaker today for us, it would be Don Jackson. So he is an ADM solutions architect working for Micro Focus. Don brings over 20 years experience to the table with ALM, Test Director, Quality Center, suite of tools. He has over a decade experience with Load Runner and Windrunner as well. So moving on, quick housekeeping items, and just to set the context for all of you so you know what you could expect. First off, we appreciate you joining us. We hope all of you are safe and healthy. Just so you know, today's live session will be recorded and it would be posted online for all Vivit members to see, and it would be saved for posterity. And the on-demand recording, slide deck, and all the Q&As will be posted on the website as well. So quick housekeeping items. When you are not asking a question, we would request you to please mute your microphone so that we just have a fluidity in the conversation. And the screen you see up on here, pretty straightforward. In case you would like to submit a question, please post it in chat. Depending on the context and the relevance to the topic that is being shared, we will either interrupt and we'll perhaps take that question, or we can park it later for us to take all the Q&As at the end. So moving on, just like to give you all a quick background and an overview of Vivit for those of you who are joining us for the first time and not a Vivit member. I wanted to share with you what this community of practice is all about. Vivit is an independent, not-for-profit service organization that represents Micro Focus brand and community globally. And it is endorsed by Micro Focus Software User Group. And our mission is to serve Micro Focus community through advocacy, community, and education. So that's briefly about Vivit, the number of lugs that we have, the kind of service that we do, and our attempt to give back to the community and interact with like-minded people. So with that, obviously, I know all of you are not to hear only about Vivit. I think the interest here is to learn about UFT One, AI, and aspects of AI. They have definitely democratized the digital age that we all live in. And UFT, our beloved functional testing tool, back from the Mercury and HP days for QTP, has been no exception. It looks like the R&D team at Micro Focus has been hard at work trying to jump onto this bandwagon and catch this next big wave of AI. So with that, let's just dig in, and I'll turn it over to Don.
So thanks a lot. My name is Don Jackson. So as was mentioned, I've got over 20 years experience in these tool sets. There a few of the tools were mentioned. I spent the first 17 years of that as a customer, sitting on your guys' side of the table. I actually was a Vivit lug leader as well when I was a customer, and about 5.5 years ago, I got pulled over to the doctor side. Joined what is now Micro Focus, and my role is I focus for North America on our pre-sales engineering SWAT team, really to come in and have and help out on opportunities and customer quandaries that are a little deeper than the normal pre-sales engineer has to do. And that means that my focus, instead of being on the broad portfolio, is really on a few key applications, being one of them being UFT One, another being ALM Quality Center, RPA, and Sprinter are kind of my focus, but I also have a horizontal focus on all of our SAP specific capabilities across the entire ADM portfolio. So you will see and hear me talk a lot about, capabilities on SAP. I do a lot of my demos against SAP applications for that particular reason. So this is kind of we've surveyed our customers to kind of talk about what the challenges are as we are discussing what our direction is and what we want to focus in on from a development perspective. And these are the top 5 challenges that we've heard back from our customers. First being that the pace of applications, the change is just too fast to keep up with from a test automation perspective. There are many applications that are going agile or adopting DevOps methodologies, and we just can't keep up with the pace of change with our test automation script. As soon as I finish a maintenance cycle, I go to run it and the applications change, and here I am maintaining my script again, and I'm just in this constant maintenance cycle. Excuse me, which also leads into the second one, which is the tests keep breaking. Every time that I get a build, the test breaks, right? And it seems that my test is very fragile, right? When I was running an automation team and started an automation team as a customer, we talked about, we had bulletproof tests, and then we had the very, we call them glass tests, because anytime that anything happened, they would just break. If anything bounced off of them, it just broke. So we had some of those bulletproof tests, and then the glass tests that, we spent a bunch of time on maintenance. The next challenge is not being able to run tests quickly enough. So I run my tests, that I put them in the pipeline, and my pipeline doesn't finish before the pipeline starts again because of the pace of change that's going in. I can't get my test to execute quickly enough. That all, those contribute to a lack of test coverage, right? So because I've spent all this time in maintenance and I've spent all this time trying to address change, I can't get test coverage in from an automated testing perspective, and that results then in a lack of quality of the application itself. Application goes out the door because the date doesn't change, and we didn't sufficiently test it, and so there's a lack of quality in our applications. Those are the top 5 that we hear back from our customers, and what we in our R&D organization and the products group focus on. How can we address each of these challenges? And I think you'll see throughout today with our AI stuff that we're really focused on addressing a lot of these challenges. But what is AI, right? So excuse me, seasonal allergies stink. No, I don't have COVID. AI is an area of computer science where we focus on creating intelligent machines. So if you look at kind of what is included in AI is this broader concept that includes concepts like machine learning and deep learning, and there's a lot of data science that goes into artificial intelligence with an overlap there. But really what you're trying to do is you're trying to teach the software to perform initially simple tasks and then increasingly complex tasks. And the way that AI actually works is that you have pattern matching algorithms where it looks for a pattern or a behavior to occur that matches a pattern, and then based on that input, compare it to the outputs and expected results, and then act upon that in some cases. So if you look across the industries, areas that are currently doing this is, I was just talking with a medical device, a medical software company just the other day about UFT One, and their software takes CT scans, and the technician puts a circle around something that looks suspicious to them, and then their AI engine will come back and say there's an X probability of this being malignant or benign, of this tumor being malignant or benign, right? So using AI to analyze those CT scans and MRI scans. AI is also being adopted in self-driving cars, right? So being able to recognize a stop sign. So you think about the pattern matching of a stop sign. Well, a stop sign has a octagonal shape. It's red with white text on it, right? That is how I can identify the characteristics of a stop sign. It probably has white text on it, right? And then if you think about automatic responders of help phone calls, so you call in and instead of it saying press 1 for this, press 2 for that, press 3 for that, the responder will say things like, describe for me what your problem is. And then they use speech to text to convert that into text, and then use pattern matching algorithms to go, okay, I think you need help with my statement or whatever it is that you called in for, right? And that's kind of where AI is being used in the industry, some good examples. But how can AI help in test automation, right? So we talked about the difficulty of keeping pace with changes, right? So if AI and what we've delivered in AI and continue to deliver is to help with asset resiliency, so that your script becomes more resistant to change, become more bulletproof. You spend too much time and effort is one of the other challenges that we've talked about before. And a good example of that is where you have to have multiple scripts because your business process is delivered on multiple platforms. And the example I'll give today that I'll show in just a minute is we have a shopping application that's delivered on Android, on iOS, on mobile web, and on desktop web, right? Because of the way that works, that ends up being multiple scripts. So if we can avoid having multiple scripts and have one script that can do that, great. Then the other challenge is that test automation requires a skill, right? It requires a scripting skill and an understanding of basic programming logic. So if there's a way that we can help reduce that skill necessary, that is a skill barrier to adoption of test automation, so that more business-friendly way to automate, then we can get more people involved, and the people that have the true business knowledge of your application can contribute to automation. What we see in the World Quality Report, which is an annual report that's generated about the state of quality across IT, is that because of these challenges, we have a very high maintenance cost. 50% around the average. I've heard some customers say as much as 70 or 80% of their time is just spent on maintenance of their existing scripts. Well, when you spend all that time on maintenance, you don't have time to create new scripts, and that drives towards that low automation coverage rate. This is a very generous number at 30%. World Quality Report actually says we're at about 17%, and we've hovered between 15 and 18% over the past 20 years. As an industry, it's pretty sad that we haven't been able to move that needle. So that's kind of what we're talking about, and what we're leveraging AI to hopefully be able to move that needle to get that greater coverage rate and reduce maintenance costs. So that example I talked about, so this is kind of what the application looks like. And I've highlighted here the profile button, right, that you use to log in. So it's an e-commerce application. The idea of an e-commerce application is, I think everybody understands, going in and searching for electronics and buying it at this point, right? You probably use Amazon or Best Buy or some other online retailer in order to order things, right? So this application is delivered on Android, right? It's an Android native app, but it's also delivered as an iOS app, and it's also delivered as a mobile web app, and it's delivered as a desktop app. And as you can see, I just called out with the red boxes around it, what the profile button looks like on each one is vastly different, right? Additionally, the way that test automation, since we first started doing it in the 90s, relies on object properties that are exposed by the operating system. Well, the Android operating system and the iOS operating system and the desktop operating system are vastly different, and therefore their object properties are vastly different. And this leads to the challenge of, in order to create just a simple login business process across all 4 of these environments, I end up with 4 scripts because of the differences in the operating systems. Or I might end up with 1 script and 4 different object repositories where I define what those objects, those logical objects are to their object properties. either way, I've still got to maintain 4 different things to do the single business process. And that leads to their challenge of, is my return on investment really there? Is my ROI there for test automation? So let's kind of look at what that kind of looks like today, right? So this is that same application, and I've done it as a recording so that, 1, I can embed it into the presentation that I deliver to you guys, but 2, I can speed it up because these devices are hosted in outside of our R&D center in Israel. So the latency going across the Atlantic Ocean is not the best. But this is, you can see, it does a very simple login, that same process, and we get the UFT results of it passed, great, we're all happy, right? So what happens if we introduce a change? So you can see before, the hamburger menu, which is this 3 lines, that's what it's called, the hamburger menu, is on the right-hand side and the shopping cart's on the left, and we flip those, okay? So that's the only change that we're doing to our application. It's a cosmetic change, really shouldn't matter. And what happens is I rerun my test, and I'm not gonna make you watch the whole run. I get this wonderful run error, right? I can't find the object, and my test failed. Now I have to go figure out, why did it fail? And depending on the complexity of your test, it may take a lot of time to figure out where it failed, because the actual root cause of the failure might be 5, 6, 7 steps before where the failure was caught in the script. So why did that test break? So if we look at how the object is identified, so the logical name that we gave to it was called login, right? And what it really is it's a composition of what class the object is, what the resource ID is, and importantly in this case was I couldn't find anything else, so I had to use the index, which means the position on the window. Well, when I changed that position on the window, it made it so that the script, instead of clicking on the hamburger menu, clicks on the shopping cart menu. And because of that fragile identification, this is a glass script, right? This is one that just breaks when I throw things against it. So I'm gonna ask for someone from the audience to unmute themselves and participate in this part. This is a participation part of the presentation. Is if someone can come off mute and introduce yourself with your first name and interact with me. Anyone? Is there anyone? Am I still being heard?
I just assume you don't want me done, so.
Well, hello, Brian. So Brian's one of my peers, but he spoke up. So Brian, I'd like you to tell me, can you identify the shopping cart icon on the screen?
I can.
And of course you can, right? And everybody on here can, because we know what it looks like. Well, what's really fascinating about this is the human brain has a concept of neural networks in there, and we have built synapses around the characteristics of what a shopping cart icon is, and we do that translation in our brain. And our fabulous brain goes, okay, a shopping cart, what does that look like? Well, it's got like 2 circles at the bottom, it's got like a half of a hexagon, and it might have a little thing to the side, it might have a line below it, but that's a shopping cart icon. That's how I can find it. What if we could train the computer to recognize an object on the screen using that same concept? So instead of having to look at, it's in this case, it's an iOS, so it's a class iOS button, and the position is this. What if we could just say, click on the profile icon, right? Or type 17T into the search field. And because it's a search field, you should know that, sorry, I'm muting my phone that I forgot to do ahead of time. Because it's a search field, I know I'm gonna have to click on the associated search icon, which is the magnifying glass, or click the cart icon, or click the settings gear, or click the location icon, which is this home button, right? It's a location icon. What if I could teach it to do that? So that's exactly what we're focusing on in our AI capabilities that we have released into the marketplace in UFT One. So the first thing is to be able to identify objects the same way a human does, using a concept called in AI called computer vision. So it's one of the major research areas that we as an industry, as the IT industry, is focusing on. Computer vision is we're using computer vision. It's obviously computer vision is used in 2 of the 3 scenarios I used earlier with the MRI scans and also the self-driving cars, right? So search on the screen for us, search on the screen, look for something with these characteristics, and then identify where it is on the screen. So you notice I didn't say, look at the picture and allow a pixel variance of whatever, right? That is something that some of the companies who claim to be doing AI do in the marketplace. We're actually looking for characteristics of the object and identifying it. The challenge that you'll face when using that picture with the pixel variance is, what if you go from light mode to dark mode on an application? The pixel variance is like 95% variance. You're never, that solution's never gonna be able to handle that kind of idea. But once you find the object, how do you interact with it? And that's where the neural network comes in. So the neural network in our brain said, okay, it's and I know the picture is a little small here, but this is a magnifying glass, right? I know, because I've used magnifying glasses before on search to be searches on applications, that if I click on the magnifying glass, I'm probably going to get a search text box there that I'm going to have to type information into and then click the magnifying glass again to have the search run. And that's where the neural network comes in, is now that I've found it with computer vision, how do I act upon it? And then we expose that, we've infused that technology into UFT One, which has got our largest customer base for all of our functional testing solutions, is UFT One. So to introduce this and have the greatest impact, we went after the biggest user base that we have, right? So if I look at that same concept of logging in and doing a product search using our AI utility, this is kind of what it looks like. And what you'll see down at the bottom there is we're going to run this against an Android device and an iOS device. Now, I'm going to fast forward so that you guys don't have to watch, to me, it's like watching paint dry, watching a script run, right? I never watch a script run. And that's the beauty of having this recorded ahead of time, is I look at the search and I can see what did it identify. It also has a weighting of confidence level. Confidence level becomes very important when we're talking about supervised versus unsupervised learning for the AI engine itself. And you see right here, it says a score of 99.99. So it is not almost 100% confident that this magnifying glass is the search button you asked it to go find, right? And it ran against both Android and iOS, same script, right? One script covering those 2 business cases. This is a huge leap forward from that use case that I had earlier of I've got it on 4 different platforms, which means I have to have 4 scripts. Today, I can do that same capability with 1 script. Then one of the things that we're not going to go into a lot of depth here today, because I'm going to focus on the browser side, because that's our breaking news, is we just recently released this into browsers as well, is we also have this capability of natural language processing, which is another research area inside of AI, which the 3rd example I used of the call center interaction leverages natural language processing. So being able to write tests in a almost English-like scenario. So we've released this into our tech preview for mobile devices, and it's a product called Codeless that you get with UFT One right now, where you can essentially write scripts using near English language. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of show you what it looks like to create a script. So the first way you can do is you can use a point and click and drag to create the step for you. So you see the shopping cart icon or the hamburger menu, what it is that you want to work on. So I just clicked on the hamburger menu and it said, oh, the step you want is click the hamburger menu. It's not android.hamburgermenu.click, it's just click the hamburger menu. Or if I want to click the profile button, I just type in click the profile and it'll click the profile. If I want to log in and use the username. You see it says type AI demo into the username input. So it's very English-like so that it's easier for business people to be able to understand this and work with it. Codeless today comes with, in its technical preview form with UFT One, that you could start using this today. Now you might ask yourself, well, what if the object isn't identified? What if I can't find the object using the AI engine? And so I'm going to fast forward a little bit, like this details icon, okay? So the AI engine said, hey, I don't recognize what that is. I don't recognize that button. You can revert back to using traditional object recognition in those cases. And I'll show an example of that as well on a real life example using SAP SuccessFactors. So then you can go ahead and run that, and you can see over here that I'm running this on an Android device, an iPhone device, and then a mobile web on an Android, on that same Android device, so that I can run the same script using near plain English to run against mobile, multiple mobile environments. And this is, as I said, it's in tech preview today. As we get more feedback, we continue to enhance it, and it'll be going GA once we feel that it's to that point. So breaking news I talked about earlier is we've released this AI capability into web. And the real value that I personally see is I'm going to actually use a role-playing scenario to explain what I lived through many times as a customer, and that is going into as a representative of IT, going in and meeting with my business, and my business would tell me, hey, great news, it is now July 21st. Our fiscal year, as you're well aware, ends in August, right? I have extra budget and I want you to go spend it and build me a website. Here's what I want the website to look like, right? So it's a PowerPoint presentation that I drew, could be a Visio diagram, could be whatever. It could be you draw it up on a whiteboard and take a picture of it, whatever the case. And essentially what I'm telling you, IT, I want you to build is, we have these shopping categories of speakers, laptops, mice, whatever, and I want pictures of it. So I just showed you one picture. I don't have time to go grab a bunch of pictures of laptops and mice, but you get the idea, right? And I want them to be able to click on speakers or laptops, whatever the category is, to bring up a list of those products. I also have at the top the name of our company, and I want that to have an anchored hyperlink that I can click back onto my homepage whenever I want. Additionally, if they're a registered user or they want to buy something, they need to log in. So they want to click this profile button, right? If they click the profile button, this is what the sign-in screen should look like. Something like this, where they type in their username, their password, they click the sign-in button, and I also want it to be able to hyperlink out to Facebook. Then lastly, if they're signed in and they want to sign out, they would click the profile button and it'll bring up a menu where they can sign out, okay? Now IT, go forth and build it. And what ends up happening is we in IT, we go, great, my business just gave me a directive and said, go forth and build this, but I've only got until the end of August. So what ends up happening is we break this up into Scrum teams, we do prototyping, we do mock-ups, we start building the code, and on August 29th, development says, okay, I'm done, let's test it. And what ends up happening is I don't have any time to develop automated tests at that point, right? I've got one day. So instead of spending the time to write automated test scripts because I need an application to test against, to start writing that, everybody in IT spends the next 24 straight hours testing the application manually. And then we release it on August 30th, and the business is happy because we've released the application. Well, the capital funding for that has now dried up. So now in September, I go back to the business and I say, hey, I want to create automated regression scripts for that. Can you give me money to go ahead and do that? And the business's response is, sorry, I told you I only had money until the end of the year. It's gone. It didn't matter if there was leftover, it was last fiscal year. I can't charge for last fiscal year. We would get in trouble if we started allowing you to charge after the fiscal year ended. So what if I could script against these screenshots and truly shift left? And so the concept of shift left is I want to be able to take something that is done later in the process and move it earlier in the process. So what I'm going to show you right now is I'm going to go ahead and create a test automation script in UFT One against those screenshots and then run it against the live system. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a really intuitive name of today's date. I know that's really creative of me. Thank you for suggesting that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, because I, just like any other scripting shop, I've got this function library, or I call it my own code snippets, where stuff that I have to write a lot, that I have to put into multiple scripts, I have that saved. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my code snippet library, and I'm going to add it to my solution so that I can easily copy and paste code out of it, okay? And so what I'm going to copy and paste out of here is the launch a browser, the browser that I want, and do the maintenance tasks that I need to do on every single script. Like, so this is the code right here. And what this code does is it checks to see if there's a browser window open. If it is, close it so that I have a control of, and I know what I'm going against. It's going to launch Chrome, and then it's going to clear the cache. It's going to navigate to whatever URL that I put in there, maximize the window, and then synchronize the window, and then tell the AI engine, work against that window that I just created. That's what this code does. And so I'm pasting that into every single script that I'm writing, okay? If you have questions about what I'm doing, that's fine. Does anybody pipe in disagree that this is just a screenshot of what I showed you in PowerPoint? I'll take silence as golden, that nobody disagrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell, and you'll notice I'm in dark mode in UFT One. This is a recent release and our latest release that you can go dark mode to save your eyes. I know my eyes are much happier staring at this all day rather than the white screen of light mode. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to point it to my browser that is looking at the image that I saved. All I did was do a snip and sketch and save it. And I did that ahead of time to save a little bit of time. Okay, so I know the business said, hey, I need the business process of product category search. Okay, I also know that there's a business process that they told me about that was login, and there was a business process that they told me about that was log out, right? And I'm just going to start scripting against that image. So I'm going to click on the speakers, and then I'm going to click on going back to the home page. And obviously, once I have other mockups, I can start doing things like checkpoints to see to validate that speakers actually came up. But I don't have that mockup yet, so I don't have anything yet to do. But I could go ahead and write code to do that as well. I also know that I need to do login. So I'm going to click the profile button. And the business gave me a screenshot of what the login page would look like. So I'm going to go ahead and open up that screenshot of that login page that they gave me. I'm going to use the refresh on the AI identification window, and it's going to scan the page for objects it can recognize. And I can say, oh, I need to log in with my username and whatever my password will be, and I'll click the sign in button. And then the last business process is that I need to log out, right? So I'm going to go ahead and open up that the business provided that mockup as well. And I'm going to hit refresh again to get the latest one. And I know I need to click on the login, the profile button, and then I need to click the text that pops up of sign out, okay? I have now, in 5-ish minutes, written a script for those simple business processes. And I recognize that yes, your application will be far more complex than the simple one that I just did. But as developers, as I'm on the Scrum team, because I'm a tester, I'm part of the Scrum team, I'm in daily stand-up meetings and they're creating mock-ups. As they mock up other business processes, I can do the same concept at the same time because they're getting sign-off from the product owner, right? We're following Scrum principles. We're doing a mock-up at the stand-up meeting. The product owner's going, yep, that's what I want you to build, or nope, it doesn't. It's got to change like this, and I can start doing that. So I know that I'm going to set up demo data of my credentials. And I also am in that same product meeting where R&D says, where the developer says, hey, I'm going to make this not be just a generic text box. I'm going to make it be an input box. Okay, not a problem. I can script that as well. I can change that as well. And what you'll see here is now we'll just say fast forward in time because I'm Doc Brown and I built a time machine out of a DeLorean. And it's today is, that was really funny, by the way, advantageonlineshopping.com is the URL for our application, okay? And it's now August 29th. Hey, the application's ready. Let's test it. Great. I'm excited to test it because I already have test automation written. And I'm gonna go ahead and run this script that I created off of pictures of mock-ups. I'm going to go ahead and run this script against the live system as soon as it's available, not in Sprint +1 or Sprint +2 or Release +1. On the initial sprint where this code, this application's ready, I'm running test automation because I was able to shift all that work left into the process. And that's the value that I really see of being able to shift left. Now, there's also resiliency. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. But as you can see, I wrote my script ahead of time. It is clicking on speakers. It's going to click on the homepage link to go back to the homepage, assuming that I didn't make a mistake. It's going to click on the profile icon to go ahead and log in. All of these things I did scripting it before I had an application, which is a revolutionary concept that frankly, I started back in the Windrunner days back in the 90s, where it was super frustrating because I always had to wait for an application to be ready and stable before I could create test automation. Because if it wasn't ready and stable, then it wouldn't work. And my script would just have a ton of maintenance that I had to bake into it. So as you can see here, it's identifying the username field, the password field, the sign in button. By the way, I haven't rebooted my virtual machine in a couple days. I probably should do that. I probably have Windows updates sitting there waiting, causing it to slow down. And you can see I'm logged in now because I can see in the upper right-hand corner that the AI demo name is up there. And I'm going to click the profile and sign out. And I'm able to write this script. I can't emphasize it enough. On day one, it took me about 6 minutes. Now, obviously, I have a lot more experience than you'll have initially on this, and so I'm able to write it much faster than you would. Maybe it takes you twice as long, and it takes you 12 minutes instead of 6 minutes to write the script. I don't think that'd be a problem. And if I look at my test results, I can see that it ran all of those steps that I created off of the mock-up, right? And I see this confidence level that I was talking about earlier. Well, that's great. So it works against a browser. I can take that same script, and I did this ahead of time, and I can extend the capabilities. By the way, somebody, if you can put yourself on mute, we're getting an echo. All right, so I can extend those capabilities. Is PowerPoint gonna let me play? And I can run that same script against now extending the capabilities so that it launches instead of Chrome, it's going to launch either Firefox or Chrome on the desktop, or it's going to launch using UFT Mobile to launch devices. I can have that run the same business process of log in and log out against Chrome, Firefox, iOS, Android, and a mobile web. So I'm not going to bore you with watching it run again, but I want to show you at the end. And you'll have, like I said, these videos are embedded. You can take the time afterwards to view all the videos in full detail, play them again. I know it's terribly entertaining. You know, I should probably put music behind it. But if I look at like the sign in button, I want to show you something really interesting. So on a desktop browser, the button's name is sign space in, right? So I paused it here so that you guys can see. It's all caps, sign space in, right? That same statement, and that statement is aiutil.button.signin.click. That same statement running against a mobile device, the button is actually called login with no space. It's completely different, a completely different text. Not only is it completely different, it's got completely different properties because I went from a desktop browser to, in this case, an Android device. It's completely different, but the same step in my script is able to do that using our neural network and our computer vision capabilities. So it's got, it knows that sign in and login really mean the same thing, right? Same thing goes for the profile button. So I showed it earlier in the screenshot, but this is showing it now that it's run. The login button, the profile button on the desktop browser, it looks like this. And then if I look at that from a mobile device, from an first Android, it's vastly different, right? It's dark mode instead of light mode. And then if I look at it on iOS, it's different yet again. The color is a little bit different. The shape's a little bit different. And then if I look at it on a mobile browser, it's different yet again. Same step was able to identify all of those because it's not looking at a picture and it's not looking at the properties. It's looking at the characteristics, scanning the screen for the characteristics of a profile button, and then clicking on it. So, kind of wrapping up is what the advantages we're seeing with the AI capabilities that we've delivered out here is we're seeing a significant reduction in maintenance costs. If for no other reason that I can, instead of having 4 scripts, I now have 1, I reduced your maintenance cost because you're only maintaining one place by 75%. Then you throw on top of that that it doesn't care if the underlying object properties change as long as the characteristics are still being recognized. We're seeing realistic numbers of anywhere from 60 to 80% from customers who are adopting this and converting existing scripts over to be AI-driven scripts. We're increasing the automation coverage rates because we're freeing up that time so that they're not spending all that time in maintenance. They can now dedicate time to creating new scripts. And Independent Health, one of our early adopters of the AI system, actually talked about 35% is what they're seeing in automation coverage rates. You can see it was much faster to create that script. I did it in 6 minutes, whereas it might have taken me 20 minutes in the past to do it using the AI util. And then the codeless part, that makes it so that everyone can contribute to test automation. The last thing I want to show you with of the prepared presentation portion is, if this is exciting to you, if you are an existing or you become a new Micro Focus UFT One customers, we have a new program because we're so excited about this to help an adoption, is our AI Customer Club program. And what you as a customer end up having to do to commit to us is that you're going to try to use AI, UFT One AI on your applications, and you have a mobile application where you can try codeless. If you do that, we will dedicate and have somebody from R&D who has weekly status meetings with you. You have their direct contact information so that they can help you with showing you how to leverage AI. They can help you if you run into a problem with AI and potentially send you private patches to make it work in your environment. We will do that all for you, and that program length is approximately 6 weeks. It might be longer, it might be shorter, it depends on what you guys decide with the program manager. So if you're interested in that, please send me an email directly. My contact information is in here. I wanted to give plenty of time for questions at the end, but I do have, if you remember, I'm gonna scroll back up. I have, time permitting, some additional things that I can show you. So if we run out of questions or we run out of dialogue, I'm happy to do showing you how you convert from a traditional object recognition to an AI one, and or we could just start scripting against a audience suggested site. Somebody yells out a site. I did this once, and they said, let's buy a Tesla car. So I started building a Tesla car using AI. Obviously, I didn't buy it because I'd get fired for putting that on my corporate card. But I don't know, maybe I could finagle that through. So with all that being said, what questions do we have? I'm not
Hi,
good.
Don.
No questions?
Hi, Don. Madhu here.
Hey, Madhu, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. And it was an excellent session. It gave us a good understanding of what the tool does. When I downloaded a couple of days back UFT One, I have a couple of questions. One is we have some existing automation test cases for a project which needs frequent maintenance. So if I have to redo everything through to a AI related framework, it's going to take more time, I believe, because I have 200 odd test cases. If I have to convert everything to AI, it's going to take more time. So do you suggest for any new test cases, can I use AI, but still the old test cases will remain in object repository?
I would suggest the answer to that is yes. And there's a third option, which is I'm going to jump into right here, is I have a traditional object repository script here, right? So as you can see, and here's kind of what the object repository looks like. Well, maybe if it comes up. I'm going to have to reboot my machine soon, I think. Here we go. And relatively simple script. I'm going to go ahead and take a snapshot of this so that we can compare it to what I want to show you as the after. So on the Micro Focus Marketplace, if you search on the Micro Focus Marketplace for the text AI awareness, you can find a function library that you can download for free that you can add into your existing script. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I have it. Let me go to my desktop. I've already pre-downloaded it to my desktop. And you can go ahead and run your script. And what, well, the first thing that I would recommend that you do when you run this is to set it to only run one iteration. So if you're doing data driving, you don't need to have it run multiple iterations. You run your script, and what this function library does is every object that you interact with, it will highlight that object and then take a snapshot of it and interrogate it with the AI engine to see if you could replace the current step that you have with an AI statement. And the advantage of that is that you can take an existing script, exactly what you were talking about, that is failing. I wouldn't do it for the ones that aren't failing, but if you have to go in and maintain it anyways, you can run the function library against it to see what you could convert in your code to be AI recognition to make it more bulletproof recognition. And as this runs, what it'll give you at the end, and I'll show this when we get there, the one caution I would give you is it is going to slow it down because it's got to do all that capture and interrogation at runtime of the different objects. But what it's going to give you is in your test report, it'll come up with, this is the statement that you executed. This is the replacing statement that you could replace it with that from an AI perspective. And if you need to see it for reference, here's the snapshot that we captured at runtime of what the object is. Now, this particular business process, what it does is it searches a category, says, click on the second available product on the left-hand side. So add it to your cart and then remove it from the cart, right? Because this is actually hosted by SAP, and I don't want to mess up their inventory that they have in their test system. I think they might get mad at me, and I like having SAP happy with me, especially in my role where I have to do the SAP stuff. So now it's deleting it from the cart. And then it's going to save the changes to the cart and collapse everything so that the next iteration, I'm at the same point, which is what you should do on every single script, right? A good practice on every single script is that you leave the artifact under test, or AUT, in the same state that you started the script in, right? So that it can iterate. So you can see here, it's now done the save changes, and then it's going to click the cart button to collapse the cart button to the right-hand side and then close the window. Like I said, I wouldn't do this on scripts that are working and passing and you don't have to maintain. I would not crack open scripts that are working. I have a very firm belief in the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so in this case, right, if your scripts are working with traditional OR and you don't have to go in and maintain it, don't go in and maintain it. But if you do, you can use this utility, and you can see this is the screenshot of what it looked like. And it says this statement in your script that got executed, you can replace with this AI util statement. So I could go into my script and I could, this was on the first available product, I could comment that out and replace it with that. I also can go into my object repository now, and I could delete that object from my object repository. So the first available product I could delete from my object repository because I don't need it anymore, right? And what ends up happening, rather than having you watch me, do that for all the steps, is your script ends up looking like, because I did this ahead of time, your script ends up looking like this. So that same script has, in my object repository for my script, it only has the root browser object. It doesn't have anything else. If you compare that to this is what it looked like before, I had to maintain all of these objects. I don't have to maintain them anymore. And I followed what it asked me to do. So I think it's very powerful when you need to do it. The other thing is you can use, you can use the GUI spy on the object. So if you're going in and you only have to maintain one statement in a really big script, I can look at this from a GUI spy perspective, and if I turn on the AI auto inspection, it'll actually inspect it and tell me if I could use an AI statement. And if I could, it'll come up and say that, and I can just drag it over and say, there we go, AI profile util, AI util profile, rather than having to use and update the object properties from whatever it was to the new one. Also, you'll notice too, the practice of having to go relabel things in your object repository so it's more logical name, because I don't know about you, but menu user SVG path is not terribly user friendly, and I have no idea what that means in a week, let alone maybe even not tomorrow. I can figure out what AI util profile means, right? So make sure your script more readable as well. Now, I'm going to further answer your question is, yes, you can have mixed AI and traditional object recognition in the same script. So this is an example of a business process of creating a candidate in SAP SuccessFactors, and you'll see I've got some AI util statements, I've got some traditional OR statements, and the reason is some of them weren't recognized, some of them were the application had load time issues where I needed to do a synchronization. Lots of reasons that I might want to do that. But this is what I think is a more realistic, rather than, I don't think you're going to get to the point right now where you can convert everything to AI util. But you'll see, I probably got about 60 to 70% of my script is AI based. And so that resiliency goes way up. To answer your questions?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'll give some time to others because we are running out of time. I have the second question. If no one else have any other question, I can ask.
Okay. Anyone else have maybe a minute? I know I'm a very verbose speaker, so I apologize for going into depth, but I never want to have somebody go, Don didn't answer my question. So what I'm going to suggest, and Terry, I'd like your feedback on this, is I'd like to suggest we kind of wrap it up, and then if people want to hang out still, I'm happy to hang out and answer additional questions. Does that sound good? And you might be talking into mute, Terry.
Hey, Don, this is Jennifer. I think there are some questions on the comment section that you might want to.
Let's see here. Let me scroll back up. Let's see. The next release of UFT One. The next release of UFT One is scheduled for the first quarter of our fiscal year next year, which is starting in November. So let's see, what version of UFT One do I need to have to install for AI? If you want it for browser, it's 15.0.1. How can I run tests on multiple devices? We have a product called UFT Mobile that allows you to do that. Happy to have that conversation with you outside of that.
And Don, you're right. I'm sorry, I was on mute. Why don't we let Neil just do a quick housekeeping wrap up, and then anyone that is on, because we still have literally everyone has remained on through the end of this, can stay on, and Don will field any questions, as well as you will get his email in the follow-up. So does that sound good?
Sounds
if you
good.
want to wrap it up, Neil? Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. Again, this is Neil. We have about 1 minute, and we do want to respect your time in case you have a hard stop and you need to be at someplace else. So we will wrap this up with this slide, and this is too wordy, but I'm not going to read this. I hope you get the gist of it. And a topic that's introduced by Vivit, a podcast channel called Espresso Talks, and as the name suggests, these are tech talks, could be related to technology industry, quality engineering, tools around Micro Focus, best practices, and they're intended to be short, bold, and crisp, as the name Espresso suggests. So we've had some episodes already, and the recordings are available on Vivit, and we hope to expand on these. So please watch out for this channel, and if you're interested to speak in one of the episodes, please do reach out. We do encourage speakers that can share tacit information with our community, and that's our way of giving back to the community. So with that, just some closing comments and thoughts. As I said, this event has been recorded and the link will be published. So do watch for your dining card code. A gift card would be emailed to you within the next 48 hours. So do watch out for that. We do appreciate your time. So it is right 1 o'clock, right in the nose. And there you go. Thanks for joining us today. Anyone with questions can please stay back.
All right, well, thanks, guys. So somebody asked, can existing UFT One scripts and Selenium scripts be converted automatically to UFT One with AI? Automatically, it's assisted, and I kind of showed how you would do that from a UFT One perspective. Selenium scripts would be better handled with UFT Developer, which we haven't talked about at all today. And we'd be happy to have a conversation about what you can do with UFT One and Selenium, UFT Developer and Selenium. The AI engine is, as you saw today, the AI engine has been built in an abstraction layer for the express purpose of us being able to leverage that AI engine for other functional testing tools that we have at Micro Focus, including UFT Developer. Our initial release is with UFT One, but it is our plans to include that in the future for UFT Developer. And happy to have a conversation with you, a roadmap conversation, assuming that there's an NDA in place and we can talk about what future plans are from a UFT Developer perspective. Question about my email for the customer club. It's in the deck. And those were the questions that I see in the chat panel. Are there people who have questions still that would like to ask? You could take yourself off mute.
Okay, Don, Madhu here.
Yes.
Okay.
Madhu. It's been so long.
When we, what was that?
It's been so long since we talked. It was a joke. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm trying to be.
No, I didn't hear it the first time. Okay, good. So when you showed the test case where you converted the existing test case to a AI util test case, so I mean, so it was a quick peek, and I didn't notice any sync or wait. So is it like a artificial intelligence waits for it, or is there any statement which like page sync or wait?
Well, you certainly could use a wait statement. However, I would strongly consult you to use a synchronization statement rather than a wait statement. So if you look here, here's an example of using synchronization, right? Is I do this action, do a sync on the browser, while this the next step .exist equals false. I wouldn't do a hard wait statement in there, right?
No, I get it. So now, so I was under the impression that the AI util itself will have like some kind of advanced wait implicit or inside the statement itself. It will wait for a certain duration, or it will smartly wait for some time. So that's what I assume. So I have to put some sync or some code in place, which I'm already doing it now. So that should be good. Yeah.
Yeah, and, but there is a. So if you look on the methods available to you, there is a .exist.
Right.
So you can use that command. You can also do a .hover, .click, or .highlight. There are some times where I've done for example, I've done a .highlight because it's scanning the page and there's a timeout for how long it scans the page and then does the action. I will sometimes have found in using it that a .highlight will actually give me the synchronization necessary to do it without having to use a traditional OR sync statement.
Yep, understood. In this case, there is a util.click. Okay. So I'm just giving you an example. One of my screen, let's say it have 5 yes or no questions. So each question have answer yes or no. If I use a AI util today, it obviously identifies it, but if there is a duplicate element, there was in your guide somewhere in your Micro Focus guide, it mentioned that you can use an anchor element like a visual relationship identifier.
Absolutely.
But it will be a tedious job for me to put so many anchor statements. Instead, can I use index, which would be simpler if I use the object repository?
You can use either one. So you could use an index, and I have an example of that. So you remember in the statement I made about the one that I converted, that it was to click on the second available one, right? So here's an example of how I did that, right? So I used index, the second index, and the second
Understood.
one
So
on the page. So one thing to note, unlike the index for object property, which starts counting at 0, the the instance identifier here starts counting at 1. So just be a little cautious of that.
and if I had to move to a different browser, like let's say there is a second tab of the application is open, then do I have to reset the context? Like
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, okay, that's good. One last question. So let's say you click on a util object and it identifies that as a profile or pencil in the example over there. I don't like that to be pencil. I want that to be edit, for example. Can I change that particular value or the name of the util?
No. It would be pencil. I would just handle that with a comment.
Okay.
So you see how I do comments in line with the same statement? So for the, I don't have pencil on this one, but I would do something of, this is the edit button. If it's so this close window, or whatever it is, right? I would just say, this is the blah, blah, blah in line.
Right. Okay.
And I brought this one back up because this has a pop-up window. This particular script has a pop-up window. And here's an example right here of where I'm setting the context to a different pop-up window. And if I look at the object repository on this one, I have a bunch of different windows. And it looks like so this is that mixed one, right? So out of this entire 130 step script, I only have these 8 objects that I have to maintain.
Oh, okay. There is a if there is a change in the object properties, it won't impact. If there is a change in object position, it won't impact, which is a very good thing. So the only, as per my understanding, the only scenario where it could fail, the AI util could fail is right now the username or the button submit is changed from submit to next. The text in the button itself got changed due to some enhancement. It will fail. Other than that, is there any other scenarios you think that this will also fail due to maintenance issues?
Assume if I can assume that it's all properly synchronized.
Okay.
No. I will tell you, so this block of code right here, by the way, I added this block of code this morning. I've been using this script for about 2 months. This morning, in preparation for this event, I ran the script, and this particular statement, I had to add a synchronization. I had never had to add a synchronization before there, right? And I had run this probably hundreds of times. So, if it requires a synchronization on that rare occasion and you just never caught it before, well, yeah, it'll break. Synchronization issues will still happen. But if it still has the, if you're keying off of the text and clicking on the text, as long as that text is there in the same format, it'll work. Now, the other thing that might happen is if the contrast were to change so much that the OCR couldn't recognize the text, that is a possibility. So like if you had, light gray on dark gray text, and before it was black on white, well, that might break it.
Okay.
But as you saw earlier too, right? I switched from light mode to dark mode as part of the presentation across platforms, and it handled that just fine. But it's, if the contrast is insufficient that the OCR engine can't recognize the text, it'll then fail.
Okay, understood. Thanks, Don. That's all the questions I have at this point. It's a
Awesome.
really good and it gave me good clarification about what the tool does, and some of the queries you answered it great. Thank you.
No problem. Anyone else have questions?
Yeah, this is David.
Hi, David.
Hi. The natural language programming tool, you said it was in technical preview version. Is there a target for when the GA of that is going to be released?
It depends on the feedback we get. So we're targeting it for our next release that it would be GA'd for mobile, but it depends, if we get a lot of feedback that says, oh, this is broken, and, we can't get it all fixed by then, it may stay in technical preview. Does that make sense?
I think so. So best case scenario is November would be the earliest.
Right.
Okay.
And that's no guarantee of, I'm not making any guarantee of what it's planned for first quarter of next year. So best case would be November.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? I can't believe I answered all the questions. Maybe people are shy. If you do have questions and I haven't answered it, you can email me. You could reply to the group, to Vivit, and ask the question through Vivit. Either one is fine with me. And thank you so much for your time today, guys. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this because I see it really changing and improving the quality life of a scripter, right? A test automation scripter. And with that, unless Terry or Neil, you have something else, I'm going to go ahead and close up.
Don, really quick, your email is don.jackson, correct?
Yep, it's in the presentation.
All right.
And
yep,
thus
and
the
I'm
recording.
typing it in the chat right now. Somebody did just ask for it. And then everyone, just so you know as well, it will be in the follow-up email that you will receive that will give you the link to the recording, the slides, as well as Don's email. But we really appreciate you joining.
Thanks, everyone.